Hello, welcome to QUT News.
Hello.
Police have been shocked by an alleged home invasion and kidnapping in rural New South Wales. The incident set off a 12-hour statewide hunt for 2 women and 2 children.
According to police, 3 armed men forced entry to a home near Turnbull in the state's central west. During that invasion, it's alleged a 68-year-old was knocked unconscious and his house set alight.
I could just see, they've used a blunt object and they've hit him pretty hard on the head a few times.
He had made his way to the property next door to raise the alarm. Even from afar, the neighbour could see he was badly hurt.
I seen old matey coming across the paddock in the loader and pulled up over there at the fence and called me over, and that's when I seen him covered in blood.
The man was taken to Orange Hospital with a 15-centimetre gash to his head. Just as worrying for the police was the disappearance of his wife, daughter and 2 teenage boys. They were allegedly kidnapped and found later near Windsor on the outskirts of Sydney. 2 men, aged 28 and 29, were arrested nearby, a third about 2 hours later. The woman and teenage boys were uninjured, but remained shaken from the 24-hour ordeal. Liam Kennedy, QUT News.
Advertising for Australia's richest horse race, the Everest, has divided a nation. Protesters did their best to disrupt a promotion for it on the Sydney Opera House.
Shining torches and phone lights, more than 1,000 people showed their opposition to gambling advertising being displayed on the sales of the Sydney Opera House.
Never again, never again, never again.
Chanting "Never again," they tried to drown out the projection of the Everest horse race barrier draw. Almost 250,000 people signed an online petition against the promotion and race organisers.
I think the message has got across that it's our opera house, don't use it for advertising, and particularly not for things like gambling.
Not everyone agreed.
There's been other sponsors on this, Samsung, for commercial reasons, there's been the Wallabies. What's the difference?
New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian says she regrets how the debate became a messy public brawl, but she doesn't see a problem with future advertising on Sydney's most iconic building, if it's done right.
We should be able to use it in a tasteful way for events which are so significant to our state.
Race officials conducted the draw in secret before suspending betting and projecting results onto the sales of the Opera House just before 7:30 p.m. local time. The $13 million event is billed the world's richest race on turf. Leanne Neeby, QUT News.
The Labor Party has unveiled a $14 billion education plan in a bid to win the next election. It says it's the biggest ever investment in public schools.
Labor has pledged to invest in all Australian public schools if it's elected in the next federal election. The $14.4 billion will be spent over a decade. It's a direct response to the government's promise of additional funding to private schools.
Don't shortchange kids in public education.
$3.3 billion of the money will be pumped into the public system during the first 3 years. In return for extra funding, the states would be required to sign up to a national plan to improve schools with clear goals and targets. The money could fund as many as 13,000 teachers and 23,000 aides.
More one-on-one attention, more help with the basics.
Labor says its proposal is the biggest school funding plan in Australia's history, but the coalition is sceptical.
They're just splashing money around before an election.
The Prime Minister believes voters will want more detail.
Parents want to know is how's that money being spent?
Georgie Hewson, QUT News.
Firefighters are among the first to face danger to keep us safe, and today those who have sacrificed their lives doing it have been remembered.
52 Queensland firefighters have lost their lives in the line of duty since 1877.
Firefighter Alan Emerson.
And today, the firefighting community paused to remember them.
We pay our respects to them and to their families and to the crews that worked alongside them.
The Day of Remembrance is celebrated every year on the 10th day of the 10th month. It's a special time for all those lives lost.
I think it's important for all of us to just stop and remember those souls, but also to stop and remember that we do have people out there working as we speak.
The Commissioner says emergency crews across the state have been working tirelessly in what's shaping up to be a dangerous summer.
It certainly is becoming more challenging. What we're seeing is there's no respite in the season.
This year's bushfire season has started 6 weeks earlier than expected, and Queenslanders are warned there are more dangerous conditions to come. Storms have also hit early across parts of Queensland, with residents being reminded to be prepared.
Please take note of the warnings that come out from the Bureau and from QFES, and for those that use social media, please stay connected.
Laura Daly, QUT News.
Parts of South East Queensland have been pummelled by heavy rain and hail, and there's more to come. Residents are being warned to prepare for the upcoming storm season.
Trees came crashing down in Nambour late yesterday, with strong winds smashing the Sunshine Coast as a line of storms travelled east. It came as a major blow to local strawberry farmers, only just recovering from the contamination scandal.
We're just starting to get back in the green after the needle incident.
With a wet October predicted by the Weather Bureau, the RACQ is reminding homeowners to have a storm plan.
The best advice is move your car under cover if you can, ideally not under a tree because this can cause more damage. Also look in your backyard at any loose items, any maybe glass top tables, things like that. Move them under cover or tie them down.
A recent RACQ study shows that only 26% of Queenslanders would take any preventative action at all if a hailstorm was coming their way. And for insurers, that's extremely concerning.
Insurance is there to help you replace your damaged property or fix it, but it is still inconvenient and people will have to pay an excess. So to avoid yourself that trouble and outlaying that money, try and protect your property and keep it safe, and it will just make things easier in the long run.
The RSPCA is also reminding pet owners to keep animals safe during the wet season.
So preferably leave them inside, perhaps leave a radio on, surround them by sort of toys and bedding that they're used to, and try to keep them calm.
With a stormy weekend ahead, residents should perhaps just stay indoors. Bridget Nagel, QUT News.
Australians living in London have rallied to the aid of drought-stricken farmers back home. They've raised more than $35,000 during an auction at Australia House. It will go to the Buy a Bale scheme for farmers devastated by one of our worst drought periods. There was vigorous bidding for such things as RM Williams boots and airline tickets home supplied by Qantas.
One of Queensland's most successful food and drinks manufacturers has cornered a special market. Now Flavour Creations is exporting to the world.
For 21 years, Flavour Creations has been one of Brisbane's quietest achievers, winning countless awards for their extensive range of medical food and drinks. They've cornered a niche market, working with scientists to develop textured foods and pre-thickened beverages for elderly patients and people suffering from dysphagia.
We do a range of the pre-thickened fluids for people living with the medical condition dysphagia, so that's an inability to swallow normal fluids.
The company supplies hospitals, residential aged care facilities and private consumers. It's now won export contracts and a new fan in the Lord Mayor.
In the area of aged care, both Singapore and Hong Kong are really now starting to up the ante in terms of the services that they provide, and they've got a fair bit of resource to put at it.
A major international expansion is now on the cards. Flavour Creations is building on its local success by expanding into the overseas market. It is currently negotiating with a distributor in Europe. It's a Brisbane success story, going from strength to strength. Alicia Buckby, QUT News.
US historians hope they've found Captain Cook's ship, the HMS Endeavour. The discovery has renewed interest in the explorer at Brisbane's Maritime Museum.
2020 will mark the 250th anniversary of Captain Cook leaving England for the transit of Venus, the beginning of his voyage to discover Australia. The Queensland Maritime Museum has big plans to commemorate the milestone.
We're going to be celebrating every stage of Captain Cook's voyage to Australia in 2020.
Current artefacts on display at South Bank are a block of Cook's jettisoned ballast and a piece of coral from the original cannon. A large replica of the Endeavour will also travel to Brisbane for the anniversary.
To Australians, it was the result of his first voyage out here up the coast of Australia, Eastern Australia, that we owe the European settlement of Australia.
The possible discovery of HMS Endeavour off the American coast has renewed interest, and the museum staff now want to gather more of Captain Cook's history, maybe even a sample from the vessel.
If it is Endeavour, we'd love to have artefacts and we'd love to show them and share them with the people of Queensland.
Keen mariners can inspect Captain Cook's memorabilia at the museum in South Bank most weekends. Manila Mayag, QUT News.
Looking again at our main story, thousands of protesters tried to block out Opera House advertising.
And still to come, the hurricane descending on Florida. Hurricane Michael has been upgraded to a Category 3 before it's even hit mainland US. The monster storm has already lashed the coasts of Cuba and Honduras.
20 Florida provinces have been evacuated as Hurricane Michael tightens its grip on the mainland US. It's already caused 13 deaths in Central America when it was still classed as a Category 1. As a Category 3 storm, it's meant evacuation for the coastal town of Panama City in Florida. Residents are preparing for winds of more than 150 kilometres an hour.
You know, this one's coming pretty close, so got a little nervous. I've got open property over here, so I feel like I'm beachfront, and just a little nervous, so I figured I better, you know, put a little extra effort into it.
But some residents of the beachside town aren't so eager to leave.
The media sometimes gets things a little bit, crazy, and, people jump and run, and, and they should do that. But we've just been through so many that we're comfortable staying, so we're going to.
It's predicted to move up the coast to North and South Carolina later in the week, just a month after the destruction of Hurricane Florence. Tom Fleming, QUT News.
Thousands have been evacuated after explosions at a Ukrainian ammunitions depot. There were no casualties, but locals are worried.
Residents woke to the sound of explosives as fire and smoke filled the sky. Explosions were hitting a military ammunition depot at a rate of 2 to 3 seconds, forcing 12,000 people to evacuate the Cherniv region.
Rumble started at 3 a.m. It rumbled 3 times, then I woke and ran to my family and started waking them up. I said, "It seems like it started."
There was a similar incident last year at another military depot.
We crept into the basement. We took documents, papers, everything we could, blankets, pillows, and stayed in the basement. We went out afterwards to check if anything changed, but nothing has changed so far.
The explosions devastated surrounding homes, leaving windows shattered and the ground covered with rubble.
Doors, frame, and a bookcase fell down, as you can see. It was a blast wave. It happened to many houses, to all the houses.
Hundreds of emergency workers were deployed to put out the blaze. It's not yet clear whether the explosions were an accident or an act of sabotage. Josh Stengett, QUT News.
People who are unable to identify as male or female in the United States can now choose a third option. They'll be listed as X on their birth certificate.
It took a few minutes to sign, but has been years in the making. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio signing into law the addition of an alternative form of gender identification on birth certificates.
We will no longer need to go to the doctor to get a piece of paper that validates our own identity.
The law allows transgender and non-binary New Yorkers to officially identify as X-gender. Transgender advocates have been pressing governments to allow changing identity documents to match gender identity.
Does everyone have a right to be themselves? Yes. Should everyone be able to tell their government who they are and not the other way around? Yes. That's why this is so important.
The new law is a big step forward for the rights of transgender and non-binary people.
This change may seem small, but this is monumental for so many people. And I am so glad new generations will not have to endure such indignities.
But changing your gender on your passport isn't as easy. Doctors must confirm an individual has undergone clinical treatment for gender transition. Anna Graham, QUT News.
US Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley has resigned after nearly 2 years in the post. President Donald Trump praised Ms. Haley, saying she'd done an incredible job. The former South Carolina governor, one of the few women in the Trump cabinet, gave no reason for her exit, but dismissed speculation she'll run for president in 2020. The president's daughter Ivanka was a rumoured replacement. She's denied that.
The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are doing their bit for mental health. Kate and William were at a global health summit in London. The event brings together politicians, academics and policymakers to improve mental health, a cause the pair champion. They listened to a discussion on the health of children in the digital age, later adding a royal touch to some art.
Indonesian rescue workers have found a dozen more bodies following last week's tsunami. The death toll has now risen to more than 2,000.
Workers stepped up their search for victims this week, ahead of a government deadline to stop rescue operations. The search will finish on Thursday, as concerns turn from injury to disease.
Some injured evacuees who didn't get treatment could be infected. We're afraid that might lead to tetanus and also diarrhoea and upper respiratory infections.
Doctors say bodies yet to be excavated pose a real health risk. The disaster has seen thousands displaced. More than 72,000 have been forced into temporary shelters in the hills after several neighbourhoods were wiped out. Health workers, low on supplies, are struggling to handle the workload.
If we extensively give out packed mineral water, I think it's not a bad idea. But then it will create another problem, such as plastic waste, etc. We are trying to provide a proper water treatment system, which should be useful.
A plan to move survivors into a more organised community is in place, but for now, those who've lost their homes are sheltering in camps along roads. Indonesia has been reluctant to accept international aid, asking foreign aid workers to leave. Liam Kennedy, QUT News.
Turkish police say they'll search the Saudi consulate where a journalist went missing last week. They believe they've got concrete evidence of his murder, but are yet to reveal it.
Well-known journalist Jamal Khashoggi has been missing for 8 days. He entered the Saudi consulate in Istanbul to obtain a marriage licence and hasn't been seen since. Turkey says Khashoggi was murdered and his body was removed. Saudi officials say this is baseless. Demonstrators have been protesting outside the consulate demanding answers.
I don't think they will obtain a result with regards to a judicial investigation, because it seems that we are facing a case of enforced disappearance that is professionally planned and carried out. I don't think any evidence on this matter could be found inside.
The UN is calling for an impartial investigation into his disappearance.
If reports of his death and the extraordinary circumstances leading up to it are confirmed, this is truly shocking.
Turkey is asking for Saudi Arabia's full cooperation. 12 Saudi officials are known to have been inside the consulate during Khashoggi's visit. They left the country shortly after. Khashoggi had been in self-imposed exile in the US after falling out of favour with the Saudi government. He's known for his strong criticism of Saudi authorities. Georgie Hewson, QUT News.
In sport, 2-star Sydney Roosters players are preparing to make their debut with the Australian Kangaroos. The week has also seen 3 trade deals between AFL teams.
It's been a year of hard work and great achievements for Roosters and new Kangaroos recruits Latrell Mitchell and fullback James Tedesco, and now it's paid off.
We wanted to set a goal and climb a mountain, and we did that.
Defence has always been part of their mindset, and the footballers hope that game strategy can help create Kangaroo success.
Yeah, it showed in all our 3 finals games. Defence won us those games, and that's from the time and effort Robbo put down to preparing us for each week.
The Kangaroos are set to play against the Kiwis in Auckland on Saturday before 15 to 20,000 spectators. In other news, AFL teams have been playing a game of hot potato with multiple trades this week. Mitch McGovern of the Adelaide Crows has joined the Carlton Football Club, and North Melbourne has picked up Jared Polek and Jasper Pittard. The Sydney Swans have also traded Gary Rowan. Anna Graham, QUT News.
The weather details are next with Anna Eyears.
And an Aussie bartender judged the best in the world.
Hello, let's take a look at the latest weather. And it's certainly been a bit unsettled with more storms forecast for tonight. Around the southeast today, the temperatures were a bit warmer and it was quite humid. Brisbane hit 27 degrees and it was 26 on the Gold Coast. Many of the major centres around the country are looking at cloud or showers tomorrow. The inclement weather will continue in Sydney with a top of 18, with Melbourne a couple of degrees warmer than its interstate rival. Back here in Queensland, a ridge of high pressure should extend into the state with a high chance of showers and drizzle. Cairns can expect a top of 31, and further down the coast at Bundaberg, the mercury will hit 28 degrees. Out on Moreton Bay, it could be an uncomfortable day for those in small boats. The winds will start out north-northeasterly at 10 to 15 knots, but gather strength during the late afternoon. As a result, the seas will rise from about 1 metre to 1.5 metres. Sunrise and sunset are on your screens. The outlook for the Gold Coast tomorrow is showers becoming windy with a top of 20. The Sunshine Coast can expect a top of 21. Last but not least, Brisbane, and we'll be looking at some cloud with showers and a top of 22 tomorrow, increasing to rain periods on Friday with the temperature falling. That's the weather for now.
Finally tonight, a toast to an Aussie bartender judged the best in the world. Orlando Marzo took out the coveted award in Germany.
Melbourne's Orlando Marzo is officially the world's best bartender. The annual event, now in its 10th year, saw 10,000 contestants from around the globe shake and stir their way to the top. The competition spans 6 months, countless challenges and loads of cocktails. Marzo beat 56 of the world's best in a grueling 4-day final in Berlin. The Melburnian says the experience was amazing.
We've all been inspired by great bartenders, and then you come here, you get to meet them all, you get to be judged by them, and you get to spend quality time with them. So it's been really, really incredible.
The event's about raising bartenders' profiles, not just what's on their cocktail list.
It helps to validate their craft, their skill, their knowledge. It raises their profile. We want to raise their profile to be as appreciated as chefs.
Part of the prize means Marzo will be travelling the world, mixing drinks and inspiring the next generation of mixologists. Leanne Neeby, QUT News.
That brings you up to date with QUT News.
Goodbye.